Hello and welcome back to the next part in my series of how I would have built Mike Bloomfield's guitar. In the last video we cut out the telecaster upper horn, basically making it a sort of double cut SG inspired guitar. This is what the body looks like right now. Hopefully you won't really be able to tell that this horn is new. Obviously, for me it's a little bit easier than it might be for anyone else because I painted this body and I reliced this body and I'm matching up the work that I did because I know what paints I used and I can easily match it. We're going to talk more about this later in the video. I didn't show you the painting that I did here of matching things up because today we are going to plug this hole and we're also going to plug this hole and then we're going to color match them. Here I have a dowel, the kind that you use to hang up curtains, and I've cut a tiny piece out to make a little plug, and now I'm just going to begin with drilling this hole so it's big enough for this to fit in. The reason why I'm enlarging this is because there is a little bit of paint and sanding sealer on the inside, and I want a as close bond between wood as possible. So let's just drill this out really quick now. Okay, so here I have the body and here I have the hole, and now I'm just gonna pour some wood glue all around, and I don't really care if it's messy because we're gonna do a lot of fixing up work soon anyway, and just put some in the hole as well. And since we're gonna, plug up both ends of this hole, it doesn't matter if glue drips in to the cavity. And now I'm just gonna tap it in, and I'm using a rubber mallet because I don't want to make weird marks or to crack anything, and I'm hammering very lightly. I put almost no force at all. I let the weight of the hammer do the work. And you leave it at something like this. It sticks out about maybe a ½ centimeter or something. And that's because the body is round, and so we're going to take off more here than in the middle. And so now, I hope you can see, we're just going to leave that to dry. We're going to take a tiny little piece of wood and just stick in these holes as well. But the hole is plugged. I've written a tiny little message on a piece of paper, and I'm rolling it up as a hidden little message, and I'm putting it into this hole here as a secret little hide thing. It's fun. You should do that to all your guitars that you build. I once, for example, built the guitar for a death metal guitarist, and I put a pentagram in the neck heel, hidden away, just as a fun little thing. He never knew about it, so yeah. I don't think he's watching my videos, so it'll be a little secret between you and me. Okay, so while this glue here is drying, we are gonna cut a lip on this body to plug up the hole. And I'm gonna use my router, and I hope you can see that I have a special bit in. And what this means is that this bearing here will ride on the inside of the cavity and cut a lip. You'll see very soon when I do it. These bits people are talking about them being extra dangerous. I think that if you're just careful and you know what you're doing and you're going slowly, you won't have any issues. Don't jump straight in. Don't push this up against the surface you want to cut. Go slowly in and go many times and work yourself up to where the bearing is up to the edge. And just make sure to measure everything. I already have a thin piece of wood here that I'm going to use for the plug. So I am going to move the bearing up to where the blade is super close to cutting into the wood, like so. And I'm going to lock it off. And this is going to be my 0. And then I'm going to move my stop and pinch the wood in between. And by pinching the wood, which, I don't know, it's like pitching a tent or something, I don't know, sounds stupid when I say it. then I know how much far down I need to go, because I can't move more than that. And so now I'm just going to put on ear protection and I'm just going to route this out. And I'll talk to you in a second. And hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing. One thing that I forgot to mention was that I put tape on the other side of my router. And as you can see, it took some damage. And that's because you really don't want to mess up your lacquer. And as you can see, it's a little bit messy right now, but nothing that you can't buff out. I also forgot that I obviously have this cavity here. So I got a little bit of a mess right here, but don't worry, we'll fix all of this. It's not a problem. We're gonna take a measurement like this, and we're gonna transfer it to our piece of wood, like this. Well, we'll just put that down in 3 places, like this. And then we are also gonna take a measurement like this. It's almost, yeah, this one doesn't go that far. We're gonna have to switch. We're gonna do it like this instead. You can just hold this in place, like so. And we're gonna make a mark here, and we're gonna go a little bit further. Now we can just take and make these lines fit together. And we'll just take a saw and cut this out, what we've drawn. And it should fit over this, and we'll have to work in this weird shape. So I'll be right back. So I cut out the piece and I just rounded it over and shaped it to fit as close as possible. If you don't have a little bit of mistakes like I have here, this will be super easy and fast. I had to go in and do some minor changes, so it won't fit perfectly, as you might see, but it really doesn't matter, and you'll understand soon. But first I need to just put some wood glue down and glue in this little piece of wood. So I'm just gonna press out some wood glue like this, and then I'm just gonna take a stick and smear it around a little bit, trying to get it up on the walls as well. And then I'll take my piece of wood and I just press it into place. Since it's a little bit unevenly shaped, it needs to go in at a certain angle, which is this way, like so. And it's a very snug fit, but it's okay. And it sits a little bit under, which you'll understand real soon. I'm just gonna tap it into place. And now we're gonna have to wait for this to dry, but before we leave it alone completely, I'm gonna take a knife or a razor blade or any tool, and I'm just gonna destroy the edge of the paint here. And you might be like, why are you doing that? What the hell is going on with you? Are you crazy? And no, I'm not crazy. It's everyone else who's crazy. No, I'm joking. The reason why I'm doing this is because if you don't, you'll have a perfect edge, sharp angle. And when all the lacquer and everything on your guitar afterwards, when you're finished with the guitar, has dried and gassed off and you're going to polish it, later down the line at some point you will see these lines here. If you've seen my video where I made a SG guitar that was right-handed into a left-handed guitar, that guitar, it's still a perfectly fine and awesome guitar and I love it, but the lacquer in this edge here has sunken in and it's just, you faintly see it. It's not something you see when I'm playing the guitar on stage or anything like that, but if you hold the guitar and you look at it, you can find the cavity that I removed. And it's just because you have this edge. And we just need to break this edge up and make it disappear, basically. Because if we don't have a sharp edge, then there won't be a sharp edge to appear on the body. So by just randomly breaking it, it won't be as visible for the eye to find later. So, even though it may look kind of like I'm destroying this guitar right now, and I understand if some of you feel like, oh god, he is completely mad. Please just trust me and keep watching, and you'll see later. I hope this makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, in the next video we're gonna work on the neck, and we're gonna use the same principle there, and you're gonna get to see it there as well. So I'm just trying to basically remove the lacquer and get down to the sanding sealer under, and just scrape away and make a somewhat mess of this. And so now I'm just gonna leave this to dry according to my glue, and I'll be back real soon. Okay, so I'm getting ready to lacquer this body. It's in there good and everything. But if I put lacquer directly on the wood, then the wood will soak up the lacquer, and I'll get this weird texture thing, and it won't look like the rest of the body. And so we have to put sanding sealer on it. Now, depending on where you live, sanding sealer can be kind of difficult to get. And so what you can do is you can take the actual lacquer that you're going to put on, and you can thin it out in a cup with some spirit, if you're using a spirit-based lacquer, which we are doing because this is an old vintage guitar. And then you can just put that there and hopefully not spill a little bit. But as long as you dry it off immediately, it won't cause issues. And then we can just move this along so that it covers where we have. And this is a very thin layer of lacquer now, and so it will soak up real quickly. And then you have some working time when it's this thin, so don't worry too much. You really don't want to spill a bunch of lacquer like I just did, so maybe be a little bit more careful and don't look into the camera while you're pouring something on a surface. Actually look at what you're doing. That's my biggest tip for today, I suppose, because that was stupid of me. Anyway, so it's gonna take a while for this to dry up, and I have a little bit to clean up. And I'll be back real soon when this is sunken in. Okay, so after you've left this to sink in, and as you can see now, it is sunken in. It's still a little bit wet, so I'm not gonna touch it. But as you saw just a couple of seconds ago, I basically flooded it. And that's how much it will sink in. Like, there is no real end to it. Now we're gonna lacquer it. And you can go about doing this in a lot of different ways. You can mask off the entire body, put a paper over here and a paper over it, spray paint over it. You can do like I'm gonna do right now, which works on this guitar because I have the lacquers and I have them in cans, because you put the lacquer into a spray gun and shoot it. So I can actually paint it on, and so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna, and this obviously depends on what kind of lacquer you're using and what color you're using, and you should always match everything with your body. So if you're doing something different than what I am, then you have to think about those kinds of things. I'm just fixing a guitar I've already made. You might ask yourself, well, this is very white and your guitar isn't the same color. That's because this is an old, well, no, it's not an old, but this is supposed to be an old guitar. So what happens is actually the paint doesn't yellow, it's the clear coat over that yellows. And so I've put on a yellowing clear coat. And we're still gonna have to clear coat this, so we're not over yet. Or it's not over yet, or yeah. And the thing is, you can actually put a decent amount of finish on, more than you would if the body was spray paint, because this surface is leveled and it's not gonna move. So yeah. And now I'm just gonna leave this to dry, and I'm gonna coat it again because there is a little bit of weirdness going on. So I'm gonna do it twice. And I'll be right back once I've left this to dry for a couple of hours and then put on a second coat. Okay, so now the guitar has been left to dry for about a week actually, I think. And so the lacquer is all nice. I had to do that because I had to put a couple of layers on because the
plug I made was a little bit too low. Maybe you saw that in the earlier clips, so I had to put about 4 coats of paint. I only wanted to put 2, but I had to put 4. But anyway, everything is really nice and smooth now, and it looks the way it's supposed to do. But now we have to sand this area and make it nice and even and flat and perfect. And after that, we'll be able to put on the clear coat. And we're going to try to do our best to match up the clear coat and the coloring and make sure that it looks like, well, not new, which is what I was about to say, but look like it fits together with the rest. And it's going to be a little bit hard because if you look back at on how it looked before, and if you look at the body right here, you will actually see that I have more than one tone, because I put one kind of yellow here and then I made it a lighter yellow till here where it's white. So we're gonna have to try to make a similar shade, because I did that down here as well. And it's just because of how lacquer age, and I want to make this look the right way, basically. And there is a lot to say about trying to match up. I did my best to try to make this guitar seem like a guitar I hadn't built, but obviously I didn't want to take apart an actual guitar from the 60s. So yes, let's just start sanding this. And I'm gonna go to 1000 grit, because I don't really need anything lower than that. So here's the body now, and I've sanded it and everything. Here I have my lacquer, and it's a mixture now because we need to make everything work together. And so in this mixture here, I have lacquer, I have a stain that is spirit-based stain, and I have a little bit of spirit. It's a little bit thick, so I'm going to put a tiny bit of spirit, because you have to mix it. You should make a couple of try pieces and see what happens, and basically experiment with different layers to see if you can find the right color when you're doing this to a guitar that you haven't painted yourself. And so you can match the colors. So I'm putting this on and I'm moving it about, and I have to move it up to the end of the body, because if you look at the surrounding area of the body and the way it looks on his guitar, you'll see that he has an edge of whiteness surrounding, which is basically that the clear coat has faded away. And so I'm just going to put this out here and move it about and get it a little bit uneven and things like so. I don't know how well it turns out on the camera. And now I'm just going to leave this to dry, and we'll be back real soon. This will dry pretty quick. It will take a couple of hours, but it will dry pretty quick because there isn't that much lacquer in it, and there's a lot of spirit, and the spirit will oxidize or whatever you call it and disappear, and so then we can work on the next level. And the way I've done it on this body in different places is I've had different amount of stain, so that, for example, here, where when it was a right-handed guitar it would have been sanded down by his arm moving, I've done it a lighter coat to make it seem more faded, while here it's a darker coat. I don't know how well those details show up on the camera, but basically that's the way it is. And you can brush on lacquer. Obviously, when you're making a guitar that is supposed to look like it's been damaged, you can get away with a lot of things that you might not do if you're trying to do this to a guitar that is new. But you can actually brush on lacquer and let it even itself out by being on a flat surface that is leveled, which this guitar is on right now. So this surface is going to flatten itself out. And once all the clear coat layers that I'm going to put on have dried completely and hardened and done their thing, I'm going to sand and level the area, and then we're going to buff it. This is the standard things. If you've seen any of my other guitar building videos, you've seen me do this a bunch of times. So we're not going to go over it, but you can do that in just a spot. You can, sand a spot where you've fixed something, and you can level it and buff it. And you don't need any special tools to do it. Obviously there are tools that make it easier and that makes it better, but you can do it the way I do in my videos. So anyway, I'm going to turn off the camera right now and leave it at this place. But just think about what kind of paints you have on the body and what kind of paints you have to match it up. And if you're using spray cans, you can spray the paint into a bucket like this, and you can put some spirit in it to make it easier to float, and you can brush with it. Even if you find the paint you need in a spray can, you don't need to use a spray can. It's easier because it's easier to get a nice, smooth, leveled surface with spray cans than it is to brush on. But you don't have to if it's not a possibility for you. Okay, so the body is lying here and it's drying, and the thing is, it's going to take a long time for the lacquer to dry, so I'm going to move on to working on the neck and let this clear coat harden and everything that it needs to do, and then I'm going to apply like 2 or 3 more coats. It sort of depends on how it looks, and I'm going to sand and I'm going to do all that work. I have other videos, there are other videos on YouTube by other creators that you can watch if curious. I'm going to talk more about this when I come back to it after I've left it to harden and when I'm filming the next step, which is going to be moving the cavity over here. I know it's kind of maybe a little bit different than what I said I would do, but it's just taking a little bit too long to make this properly. I don't want to stress the process of lacquering because that's when disaster will occur. And when you do this on a guitar, you need to be really calm. I've tried to create a situation where I am trying to patch an actual guitar. The whole idea here is to pretend that I'm actually working on Mike Bloomfield's guitar, but I obviously can't recreate that perfect. It would be a totally different thing if it was actually a production line guitar that someone was making. Then all these steps that I'm showing you would be more difficult, and I would really have to spend a lot of extra time color matching and things like that. And I'm most likely gonna have a video somewhere in the future where I'm doing this, because it's one of those things that show up when you're doing guitars or when you're preparing them. It's the same thing when finishing a crack or a dent or something in someone's guitar. You might have a chip out of the paint and you'll have to do a color match and fix it. And so there will definitely in the future be moments when I show you how to do spray cans and painting like that. But hopefully you're learning something from these videos and enjoying watching them. So I'm gonna go work on the guitar neck, and I'm gonna, you know, do the editing and things like that. And I'm just gonna let this dry really well, and then I'm gonna come back and clear coat it again. And you just have, it takes a lot of time. I'm not able to show you how much time actually goes into this process. So when you're doing this, be patient. Color matching and getting a perfect blend is something that takes a lot of time. So I hope you understand why we're not doing a video of cutting the new cavity now, even though I think I've said that I would. It's gonna have to be its own video, and it's just because I have to let everything dry. So hopefully you enjoyed the video and you'll come back for the next one when we'll take care of making the neck into a left-handed guitar neck. Anyway, until next time, stay awesome and cool, and go and paint a bunch of scrap pieces of wood to color match and get the perfect blend, because really that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to make scrap pieces of wood look like the paint you're trying to match, and then when you're 100% sure of what you want, that's the color you put on your guitar.